Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The United States recently accepted 59 white South Africans under a special refugee program. The Trump administration claims these individuals face racial discrimination and violence in South Africa. Critics argue that the decision is racially selective as the United States has halted refugee admissions from war-torn regions like Afghanistan and Sudan. Now, joining us this morning to give us insight on this development is Kallie Kriel, CEO of AfriForum. A warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Yes, good morning to you, sir. It's great speaking to you.
Now, Mr. Kriel, you're part of those that travel to the United States to advocate for white South Africans, that they are being killed, especially white farmers, which the United States president has responded to by giving white Afrikaners refugee status and claiming there's a genocide against white farmers in South Africa. Can you tell us what's happening in South Africa in this regard? And is there really a genocide against white farmers in your country?
Well, let me start off by saying, unfortunately, South Africa is a very violent country, and we are not winning the fight against the high murder rate that we are seeing in the country. But there are two categories of crime or murders, only two, where people are calling for such murders to be committed. The one is with regard to xenophobia. We know, if you look at the social media, there's a high intolerance towards people from the rest of Africa coming to South Africa, and you have people then actually going ahead and stirring up emotions in that regard. And that's the same thing that is happening with regard to not only farmers, but also Afrikaners as a cultural community. You have somebody like Julius Malema calling for the killing of Afrikaners. And of course, we then tried to get the South African Constitution and court to protect us. The Constitutional Court did not protect us. We asked the President of South Africa to condemn these chants that call for violence against Afrikaners. He refused to do so. And I think from a perspective in America, if they see visuals of people calling for the killing of Afrikaners, of course, they would be worried. And then the situation is made worse by the fact that what also makes farm murders a bit different is that there's a high number of those murders that are committed by using torture. Using a drill, drilling a hole into an old lady's feet, using hot irons, using boiling water, and a number of horrific methods. And within that context, I think there's a worry. Of course, we never say there aren't any other murders in the country. There's a lot of other murders. But what we've seen, government prioritizes some kind of violence, for instance, violence against women and children. The fight against that is a priority crime. We are in favor of that because that's a scourge that needs to be eradicated. The government has a priority crime for gang violence in the country, which is good because there's a scourge of gang violence. But they refuse to declare also farm murders a priority crime. And I think it's within that context that many Afrikaners are not feeling safe and that they have now taken up the offer from the U.S.
But these crimes are not targeted at Afrikaners alone. They're targeted that South Africa has a crime problem. So why do you make it an Afrikaner problem?
Well, I think especially because that's the murders of Afrikaners, as I've said, is only one of two categories of crimes that there are people openly calling for that crime. Nobody is saying kill the gangster or chanting kill the black farmer. It's being chanted kill the Boers. And Boers is, of course, a term used for Afrikaners. So I think that is what makes this exceptional. as I've mentioned, the tortures that we don't see on a large scale in terms of other crimes. And as I've said, in terms of other crimes, some of them are declared a priority crime. But there's a refusal, not only a refusal to do so. You had President Ramaphosa going to New York a few years back and saying there's no such a thing as farm murders in South Africa. So it's in denialism. We're not asking special treatment. It's just saying here's an issue that needs to be addressed. Instead of going into denialism, let's say, how can we solve it? Because we want to bring up our children here in Africa. Afrikaners have become Africans. You know, Dutch, German, and French people came here in the 1600s, and they merged and became a new people that named themselves after the continent, Afrikaners. We have turned our back then on Europe to Africa. And for me, I'm not a Frenchman, I'm not a Dutchman, I'm not a German. I'm from Africa, and we want a solution here in Africa. And what we just need for all of us is to say, hey, how do we solve this? But we've seen the ANC not acting against xenophobia. We've seen the ANC not acting against this kind of violence we are seeing. And then the only option is to say, let's put pressure on the South African government and the ANC leadership. And I think that is what the US is doing at the moment. Hopefully it would force the ANC now to make sure that we address these issues seriously.
All right. In your championing, you know, that Afrikaners are under an existential threat, the many who believe that AfriForum's actions have undesirably influenced international relations or the perception of the country and has exacerbated tensions within South Africa and as well, you know, in the US. How do you respond to those who say that what you've done has brought more tension than it has brought relief?
Yes, no, I think that is a political strategy used by the ANC leaders because they don't want to take responsibility for the negative consequences of their own policies and actions, and now they have to try and find a scapegoat. When President Trump sent out his first tweet, and that was on the 2nd of February this year, at that stage, been to the US for 7 years. And the first thing the ANC said, no, it's not us, it's AfriForum. So there has been a coordinated campaign to make AfriForum the scapegoat. And people say misinformation being propagated by AfriForum. And as soon as you ask them what misinformation, and sometimes the media then took a bite of the cherry and published what they said the misinformation was, and we took them to the press ombudsman in South Africa, and we already had news outlets such as Newsroom Television, Daily Maverick, News 24, Mail and Guardian, Sunday World, all had to apologize to AfriForum because it's false. They put a narrative in our mouths, something we never said. We are quite open with what we said. We even published our memorandum that we handed to the US. It's open for all to see. And that memorandum is factual. If anybody says it's misinformation, they must say which points do they regard as misinformation, and then we address those. The problem we have now is a problem that was caused over many years by the ANC leaders that have started alienating the international community, also other countries in Africa. And now we are reaping the bitter fruits of that irresponsible behavior.
Now, President Ramaphosa has described those that took up the offer to migrate to the United States on this refugee status as cowards. President Ramaphosa is going to be in the United States next week to visit Donald Trump. My question to you is this not making light of serious refugees that have been fleeing war-torn countries, the people in Gaza, the people in Sudan, for example, that have not been given this sort of privilege. Is the U.S. giving this to Afrikaners just because of the color of their skin? Why haven't you personally, as a CEO of AfriForum, if you say you're fleeing a genocide in South Africa, why have you not taken up this offer to relocate to the U.S. yourself?
Yes, I think it's important to say that part of what we are doing, why we are fighting so hard against what is wrong in this country, is because we see ourselves as Afrikaners that can only survive as a cultural community in Africa. We cannot say, well, we are targeted as Afrikaners and then go and settle elsewhere and then be assimilated, because that would mean the end of Afrikaners. We respect, however, that there are people that would want to take that route, but that's a solution for individuals, not for the people, like the Afrikaner people in this country. Then with regard to other refugees, of course, I have sympathy with all people that are being persecuted. I think what in this case also plays a role is that the US played a major role in the settlement of 1994, making sure that the apartheid system, which was immoral and unjustifiable, was exchanged for a new dispensation. And as part of that spirit, it was said that Afrikaners would not govern because as a minority you can't, but that there would be checks and balances for Afrikaners to survive as a cultural community within the new dispensation. And now that has gone wrong. The ANC does not stick to that agreement. And I think there is then an obligation on the US, as the people that brokered that agreement, to make sure that that agreement is upheld if one party, in this case, the ANC, does not stick to the spirit of that agreement.
All right, Kallie Kriel, CEO of AfriForum, thank you for your time with us this morning. We'll continue to track the updates regarding this offer and how the people in South Africa are receptive toward it. To have a wonderful day.